So today we're going to get started on the armatures here. So you'll hopefully have something that looks similar to this and be screwed into a base and ready to start putting the clay on, hopefully today. The most fun part that I have is doing this and getting the muscles roughed in. I don't know, I just find it really fun. It's quick, you get immediate results, and it's a really good anatomy study every time you do it. So we're going to hit the major bones and joints. You don't need to do every bone, obviously. You're just doing a support structure. So this is a support structure that I've just done after doing it a few times. This is all done with 2 pieces of wire only. So there is a process to get this. If you want to get it to happen without it being too many pieces, it's like if you just joined each limb in one piece, they would be really loose and fall apart. But the way this is, it's all one from here, crisscrossing down and coming down to the legs, and then the arms is one other piece, and that's it. So the only thing you need to decide today is whether you're doing a male or a female, or 4 legs or 2, or you have to decide on the skeleton. But if you want to use this as a concept piece and just kind of figure it out as you go, you're welcome to do that, and it's quite a fun process in that way too. So you can pull a bunch of reference together and kind of figure it out as you go. But establishing your proportions and your head heights, your body size, you have to decide that before obviously you do the skeleton. Because trying to change it later is a real pain. You can make minor changes, like if you make the arms too long and you want to clip the wrist so you can make the arms shorter, you can do that, but you will ruin portions of your piece. So think about it ahead of time and spend a little time working it out. So what I usually do is get some sort of reference together. In this case, I'm going to do a nice lady study. I'm probably going to change the proportions a little bit. I'm not a big fan of the... Anyway, you'll see. But you have to decide. So if you're going to start with a reference like this, you need to basically just draw out the major points that you're going to hit your hinges, your bones. So if your scale is roughly this, I wouldn't recommend you doing a male, a really muscly kind of Hulk type figure at this size. You'll be using like 4 pounds of clay just to fill it in. It adds a lot more than you think. If you're doing a female character, you can get away with a little bit bigger with less clay, and the bigger it is, obviously, the easier the detail to do little details. So you don't want to start too small. If you do half this scale, you're gonna be in the miniature scale, and you know. That's like 1/24 or something ridiculous. This is about 1/12, I think, a paper size. So if you draw your character the height of the paper, or a little bit less, maybe 8 inches, it's a good height, you'll be in good shape. So always start with this. So what I need is your widths between joints, and you really only need the one side for measurement, but it helps to draw it to balance it out. Now you're going to have a hourglass, and you see it works really well for this kind of shape. It helps for posing it. You notice it's not just straight either. I've swayed the back, I've tilted the hips and shoulders, and this is just a rough that I used to use for when I was doing the life studies, but you can use the same principles. So if you're going superhero dimensions, their torsos and legs are quite long. It almost doesn't even feel right. Now you're not going exactly for anything that's near the surface. You don't want to stick your bone right there. You end up with such a thin layer of clay that you're gonna have problems later on, and it gives you no freedom in case your proportions shift a little bit when you start adding on. So you want to put the joints in where it doesn't have to be exactly where the pivot goes. Like your hip bone does come out to that far, but the pivot is further in the pelvis, and also you want to stay more towards the center of the bone than where the actual bone would be. The center of the mass, I should say. So if those come in, The shoulders especially too. You don't want to be anywhere near the edge there. But you do have to pivot. You do have to pivot the arm into the center. So think about it like that. You want to hit those major places. That's about all I need. And the foot, you're obviously not going to do a whole foot. All you need is a loop that is big enough to hold a screw. We're going to be screwing them right into the wood. And it's quite secure. You will get a little wobble, but it'll be fine. As long as you don't put 5 pounds of clay up there, it's not going to fall over with this gauge of wire. Okay. So if that's the scale, so same with the head, you're not going to go anywhere near the head. You don't need to make a skull. All you need is something that the head can come onto, because a lot of times you will want to take it off to work on the detail. But you just need a stump, something for it to sit on. But the actual muscles will be, you know, way up here. So this is actually way inside the chest area. But you might want to draw a little silhouette over it too to make sure you're not hitting, you're not going too far out. Make sure it works. But that's all you need. You just need a rough idea. Yep, will work. Might even be a little long in there, but I don't know. I tend to do it shorter. You see how I did it just by eye. This was actually made from a live model's reference too. So the hips and the shoulders and the length of the torso are a little more on the realistic side than proportion-wise. So okay. So here comes the fun part. So I've done this a lot of times. So it's going to be hard. You may poke yourself. Try not to hurt yourselves too much. This wire is sharp. But it will kink up pretty easily. I've bent a few wires, so I'm used to straightening it out. But you'll see. So I need to start with a piece that's way bigger. I usually end up cutting a bit off, but that's fine. Rather you waste a little bit of this. This wire doesn't cost much at all, so don't worry about it. And this is actually standard wire that you can get in any hardware store. 14 gauge. You don't have to buy any fancy armature wire. In fact, most armature wire is sold for the different kind of clay like terracotta, and it's extremely thick and extremely pliable, which you don't want for this. You want this to be firm and stiff at a small size. And we have a different gauge wire too, a smaller one that we can wrap around. So you see what that does. It makes the clay stay better. And it adds a lot of strength too. So I'm basically going to measure up, guesstimate for the twists, something like that. Usually about double the length of what you draw. You can get away with cutting. And you start at the head. And work your way down there. So I'm going to start with a twist. You see how useful the paper is at this point. Now the markings, it's pretty easy just to flip it over. I would recommend you you just flip your wire over and measure on the same side just to be sure. But you have a lot more freedom than you might think, because you can always add or remove clay if you're not going near the surface, so don't worry about it too much. This doesn't have to be perfect. Here you want to be careful, because the wire will end up shrinking when you go to bend it, so you might want to go a little bit longer than you'd think. Yeah, that's better. Same thing when you're going to bend the spine, keep that in mind. You have some curvature there, so everything will get a little bit smaller when you pose it. So better not make it too short. Now here I like to twist it in sort of a knot at least once to give it strength. And this is where it gets a little kinked up. You want to be careful. Just once, and the smaller wire will help hold it together. So now again, I don't want to make it too wide here, otherwise I'm going to hit the edge. And getting that straight again once it's been bent is probably one of the hardest things, so be careful. Yeah, you could try twisting it a second time, but it's not really worth it. It gets so messed up and kinked you won't be able to get it straight again. Also, you can take your pliers and score it a little bit, sort of make a mark on it. That helps for measuring also. Now again, this isn't the ankle, this is actually the bottom of the foot, heel contact with the base. So you may end up, if somebody's up on their toe or high heels or whatever, you want to go a little bit longer there. It's going to feel weird because it's too long. But better you err a little long here. You can always shorten the feet a little bit more. Now before I get that exact, I want to tighten this up because you can see it's a little loose there, and it will shift the length. But I know I've got way more than enough, so I'm just going to cut this extra off so it doesn't poke me in the eye. Okay, so the smaller wire. It's quite a bit softer. And yeah, there's no real exact science to this. Just hold it as tight as you can and wrap it around. Just take the extra up. You want to watch those little ends are quite sharp. Your hands, this is galvanized wire, so it's rust proof, but you will get a little bit of whatever that is, fine bits of metal on your fingers, so you might want to wash your hands after doing this before messing with the clay, so it will stain it. Just a little bit. This is gray clay. I mean, you're going to paint it anyway. It doesn't really need to be so perfect. Okay, so now I have a little extra here, so I might as well just use it and go down the leg with it. Now I'm pulling quite tight as I go around here. If I just do it loosely, I'll end up with this. It's not very good. So I'm giving it a pull outward the whole time. Yeah, you see if you pinch too hard with this, it's such soft wire, this little stuff, that you can break it right off, so you gotta be a little careful. You see how that's much tighter now? It'll be more accurate now. If I go to measure the feet length, you don't want to end up with different heights there, obviously. So I like to give it a little bit of a bend here just so I can sort of visually see where the knee is. Especially on a feminine shape, it helps before you get the pose down. That's not bad at all. Okay, now the end, I just need again enough of a loop to make a screw attach. And you probably want to hide that in the front of the foot most of the time. Another thing you can do is build up a little bit of a bump on the base to hide the screw before you start the foot, and then it doesn't matter where you put it, which actually I might have to do anyway on this one because it's such skinny ankles. But in any case, make a little loop around the plier, cut it off. And I can't help giving it a little pose at this point, just because it makes it more interesting. Even though it's still relaxed, I think it helps. Okay, and while I'm here, I might as well do the other leg. I'm just rolling the plier over the tip so I don't leave that edge poking out. It really helps. I'll be around to help everybody though, so don't feel bad if you don't get it right away. Okay, now the arms. You want to make sure you have enough. Now, I might have gotten lucky here with these extra pieces, but again, don't feel too bad. You can always use this for something else. This is close, but it's a little tight. I might be able to make it. You don't want it to come too far down into the hand, especially on very thin armed people. You may want a little bit of support, but again, this is just to hold the clay in place. This isn't a skeleton that poses the final figure. So you can do anything on top of what's already there, as long as the bulk of it is held up. So this can stop at the wrist. It doesn't have to go through the hand. And in most cases, it's a little easier to pose small fingers when the wrist can just be moved with the clay without an armature underneath it. So this might be just right. I might just go with it. So if I want to get the length right, same kind of problem. I'm going to start with at least eyeballing it like this. And then this part is probably the trickiest part, is getting this thing fished around at least once. You may want to start by wrapping it, but it's just going to slip and slide around like this if you don't do at least one loop with this wire. So I'll usually just pinch it like this, just to hold it in place. While I get that first loop around. Yeah, that's nice and tight now. So now it's not going to roll around. And if I'm lucky, I'll get one more out, and it'll still be long enough. Hope. So it's a little loose there. I'm just going to pinch as I spin. There we go. Let's see. Not bad. Pretty good guess. All right. Yeah, see, that's a little too far out. I kind of have it just right where it joins, where it passes over the other wire, so I'm going to have to be a little careful there. But the smaller wire, at this point you may want to leave it in a T, get the smaller wire wrapped around it, and then it'll be secure in that spot after it's all tight. It's actually a little thinner. So here I'm holding them next to each other. I'm going to go around it a few times. Here I want to zigzag through it a little bit, so it's not just, you don't want to just spin it around in one direction, especially on a joint like this. You want it to really be secure. You've got to go around a few times and just change directions, crisscross, once or twice. It should be good. Yeah, see, that's nice and solid now. Again, just a little bend so it looks like a relaxed pose. Helps me make sure the proportions are right. You can pull on this with the pliers too. Again, pull too hard and you can just break this too. If you bend it too many times back and forth, it's not super strong. See, you can just snap it off. That's about it. You want to make sure you cover at least everything once. You want to make sure these two sides are even. Let me finish, let's see. Could use the extra to go down here. Do be careful with these. I've pinched myself more than a few times by doing this. You go to squeeze, you don't think about it. It really hurts. Please try not to do it. It's the worst when you're squeezing and you slip off of it. That's when it gets you. Okay, almost there. I'm going to go one more time through here. There's a little extra there. So again, same thing, measure. That's about right. And getting these the same, you just put them together. Pretty much it. So that's the rough skeleton. Before we get any into fleshing this out, I think we're going to pause for a while, make sure everybody gets this going. I've gone forward with this before, and I think it's better if it's fresh and we all get this far before we move on. So yeah, let's go ahead and pause it.